Yo, what's going on, guys? It is your boy Seso. Here's a video here today, bringing us a brand new video, episode number 2 of Bad Graphic Design Tips for Beginners, where today's video we're going to be going over typeface, balance, and I believe variety. So with those 3 different things, piggybacking off of episode number 1, which happens to be right here. If you guys haven't watched it yet, totally recommend watching it. We go over hierarchy and things like that. Basically my little series for beginners that I can hopefully, help you guys understand a few different things, have a few different things click. That's the whole point of today's video here today, and a whole series in general. So with that being said, hope you guys learned something. If you guys, of course, enjoy the video, be sure to leave a like on the video. And yeah, that's it. Let's get into it. All right, homies. So more fundamentals I want to highlight would include typography. One thing to understand that picking your fonts for a project is an art itself. When you go to choose your fonts, you want to make sure you choose wisely. So if your project is based on a modern futuristic brand, well, your fonts should also carry the same attitude. You can always find a typeface that does 30% of the work for you, meaning that the typeface you choose can carry a vibe more than the surrounding elements themselves. So when you go to choose your typeface for a villainous and cool brand, don't go picking a font that throws the direction off before you even start. As a designer, you should always be pulling these characteristic words from your client or when you study for a brand, just to make sure you understand where to actually take the design. Especially when you want to use more than one typeface for your project. You want to make sure you're choosing fonts that actually match. Whether if that's your font matching the same style, the same height, the same length, or the time period of the font that it was created in. So for example, if I were to choose a font that is modern and futuristic for my brand, you can break it down as main text and subtext fonts, where for your main text font is used as your star font, which can be used for heading information, while the subtext font can be used to celebrate the actual style with typography texture or use it as the face of secondary information. So for the next time you go to figure out what colors you want to use for your design, be sure you spend the same amount of time understanding which fonts you want to use as well. And for those who only want to use one font in their projects, that's where you want to introduce weights as your differentiator. As where weights means the difference of thickness of the font in the font family. That way you can use the bold version of a font as the heading text, and you can use something like a semi-bold or a light as the subtext. I would personally only ever say to use 1 to 2 to 3 max different typefaces in a project, as it could get really muddy really quick. Given that, typeface is one of the most important elements in a design as it usually carries the information. So with that, be sure you're spending time finding the perfect font, as it is one of the easiest ways to understand the overall vibe of a project. Okay, so the next thing I want to mention is balance. Balance in design typically comes from designers' intuition and experience as they continue designing throughout the years. One of the most obvious ways to balance a design is using symmetrical design, where if I were to draw a line in the middle of my project here, you can see there's an even amount of weight or space or text on both sides of the design. With saying that, symmetrical design can be really easy to understand. However, asymmetrical design tends to be where people really struggle, where if the information or objects that you were tasked to put on canvas just simply do not lend themselves to a symmetrical design. So one of my favorite ways to break down asymmetrical design, and one of my favorite ways of learning, is using boxes to square off areas to further my thought behind how I want to actually balance my composition. Where if I want to see how I can actually place information in objects, I'll use these boxes to try to find really cool layouts that'll normally never happen with symmetrical design. Taking these boxes and making some longer, shorter, or even splitting these boxes can really help further your composition and run into really cool ideas. Then when you finish creating your boxes, you can take these boxes and replace them with actual objects or text. You'd simply want to imagine the fact that each element of design, whether if it's an object or text, basically replaces the shape of the rectangles. Of course, after time in the program and as your intuition grows stronger, you'll see these boxes without even actually creating them. But for me, it was one of the easiest ways to actually grasp the idea of how to actually balance my compositions without always using symmetry. And I definitely hope for the designers who are watching this video as beginners can use this as like that little click that just helps them understand how to make a really cool composition from scratch. Now, to piggyback off balance, I want to also mention variety or variations in your art. Variations of a design layout you create can really help refresh a design and make it pretty much brand new again. Now, adding variety into your compositions can include typography change, where it's changing the font style of something or how it's laid out, basically all things type, because as you guys now know, changing the font of something does change the vibe. Then comes color. Color being another driving force for variety, where you can use it to describe something. For example, you can use red to symbolize victory, and then you can use black to symbolize defeat. That way, every time your viewer actually looks at the composition, they already know what they're going to be looking at. You can also even have multiple colors in a brand guideline to use for special occasions. Your style does not have to consist of the same textures, fonts, or colors. Your style can also be based on your layouts and how you compose your actual projects. With that being said, you can build many projects with very similar layout, but changing the vibe of the project with new and fun textures and elements to get a completely different feeling and end result. So what I'd like you guys to walk away with is, if you had a project that was super successful and loved dearly and was super well received, give the layout another try, but in a different project. You might just notice your style wasn't always based on your colors and your textures, but in actuality, it was based on how you compose your pieces. When you end up having a composition that is super successful, you have every single right to keep at it. That being said, guys, that is the end of the video here today. So hopefully you guys learned something. Hopefully give you guys just a little more confidence when going into Photoshop, as of course being in a graphic design community and whatnot, or just like being in graphic design trying to do it for life, you know, or for a career. It could be hard, it could be very intimidating, but at the end of the day, one of the things you can do for yourselves is just putting your time into the actual program, and we're just getting that kind of like idea and that general basis and that comfortability inside the program, because that's all it really takes is honestly time. But hopefully videos like this can help you guys out when it comes to actually, I guess, navigating the actual program, or just getting some ideas of how to actually navigate your thought process. So yeah, if you guys have not watched episode number 1, I do really highly recommend it, as this of course does piggyback and kind of continue on with the series. So yeah, I love you guys. I'll tell you guys later. Seso HQ out. Do not forget to keep smiling, stay positive, and stay freaking productive, guys. Later, much love, and if you haven't subscribed already, please do so. Thank you. Bye-bye.